Okay, good evening and welcome to our end of year current events night again. And it's hard to believe, isn't it? Here we are again at the end of another year. It's just craziness that the years fly past. I know that these guys don't think that, but for those of us who are middle-aged and beyond, I'm sure we can all relate to that. And as I was just reflecting on this year, 2025, and I put some of these other dates up there, I thought, 2013, that was 13 years ago, and that seemed like that was deep into the new millennium. But that's a long time ago now, and we are on the verge of 2026, which is just incredible. And I guess what we want to do tonight is just take a moment just to reflect upon the last year and see some of the events that we've all seen. Wow, this is unbelievable. I've got a special side table just for my drink. Thank you very much for that, John and Shirley, for that combined effort. It's an opportunity for us to just reflect on some of the things that have happened in the world, but it's also an opportunity for us to reflect upon our own life as well, and that's what the end of the year does or should do. God set up the calendar in Israel so that there would be moments in the calendar, a lot of moments actually, of feasts and festivals and days of importance that were intended for them to just stop for a second and just reflect back on what's happened in their life and think about what they're going to do going forward. And that's, for me, I find the end of the year is the only time that you get to do that in our busy lives, at least at the end of the year. And it's still busy, but there's some time in January, isn't there, for you to just reflect. And that's what you should do, not just from a worldly point of view, but from a personal point of view. I'm sure we all made commitments or things that we wanted to do for our family or what I wanted to do as an individual at the start of this year. It's a good time to think about how you went with those types of things and perhaps some of the things you want to do in the next year that would be realistic spiritually. It's a great time of the year to do that. Now, as I said tonight, what we want to do is just reflect upon what's been happening in the world. And I think that we as an ecclesia have probably been doing this, and Uncle Andrew probably knows it off the top of his head because he's got all the statistics of the plan going back for decades at a ready recall. But I would think that we would have been doing this at our meeting for about 15 years. And we've been going through at the end of the year and just reviewing what's happened. And I must admit, for the ones that I've been involved in, I can't think of another year like 2025 where so many things have happened of such great importance in Bible prophecy and for the events leading to the return of Jesus Christ. There's been some massive years like 2020 when the world changed through COVID, but when we are talking about events which are particularly about what the Bible says will happen in the world in the lead up to the return of Christ, I can't think of a more important year than this one in 2025. And that's interesting to think about because the other thing I find is because there's so many things that are happening, I just lose track of it all. Life is like a whirlwind and there's so much stuff that we have to be engaged with every day that this stuff's just streaming past us. And it's hard to just put it all in its place. So what I want to try and do tonight is just, hopefully very simply, I've got 7 dates from this year, which I believe were significant dates when a significant thing happened. And we just want to try and look at those significant dates and see how they fit into God's plan and hopefully continue to gain some confidence within ourselves that we are on the right track in what we're doing with our lives, because I certainly believe that we are. So, as I go through each one of these dates, I'm going to ask you to think about and guess what happened on this date. And I reckon you should be able to get, you won't be able to get one of them, I don't think, but you'll be able to get at least 6 of them. You should be able to know what happened on these dates. Okay, the first one is January the 20th.
Inauguration of Trump.
The inauguration of Donald Trump is definitely the first important date that I have on the calendar for 2025. And there he is there. Donald Trump was inaugurated as the president for the second time on the 20th of January of this year. And he's the reason, isn't he, why this year has been so crazy. Because he's just a crazy individual, just with crazy energy, and he has changed the world. I mean, it's been going on for years, but this year it's all intensified because he won the election just through amazing circumstances, and he's thought, I'm going to use every last second of my presidency to achieve the things that I want to achieve. And that's what he has in fact done. And there's just been an endless stream of things that are happening every single day that this man is changing the world with. And it's interesting, isn't it, the way that he was elected. We all remember this image, and it's just it's an amazing image of when he got shot in the ear. Like, if you were going to be shot and you had to choose the area of your body that you wanted to be shot in, it would just be the top of your ear, wouldn't it? And then look at the pictures that he got. He's now got, I noticed in the White House the other day, he's got that picture. He's commissioned an oil painting. It's enormous, and it's actually in the White House as you walk into the front entrance of the White House. But such is the significance of it for him. But he said in the speech after that event, you may remember, I think it was the Republican convention, he said, I had God on my side. Now, we know that that man's not a godly man. He says he is. Well, he doesn't, actually. He's sort of been quite frank with some of the things that he said this year about what he believes. One of the things I remember when he did the peace thing with Israel, someone said, do you think this is going to be your ticket to heaven? And he said, I don't reckon I'm going to heaven. He said, my heaven's here, and I'm going to make the most of it while I'm here. But the circumstances in which that man got brought back into power were incredible. Now, we're not on that man's side. We're not politically involved, and it's easy to be on his side or not on his side and get involved in the politics. But what we do know is that God uses men like him to achieve his purpose, and has done right throughout the history. Men like Alexander the Great, men like Napoleon, men like Hitler. All these people, God often uses an individual to bring about remarkable change in circumstances. And we know that God's angels are working in the world to bring about all these types of events. And I believe that the events surrounding that man are no different as they are for all the leaders of this world. Now, as I said, this headline probably summarises pretty accurately what's happened in the world since he's come to power. It has been a chaos. It's hard to know where to look. There's just so much stuff going on that he's involved in. And probably this image here for me summarises the chaos when he had in the Oval Office, he had Elon Musk, who was involved in the trying to get rid of corruption within the government, and there he was next to him with his son on his shoulders. It was just the most crazy interview that could you ever think of. And Trump was just watching as if it was just normal. But that's what we've become used to in the headlines of today, just this chaos. I mean, can you imagine that happening like in Reagan's time or any of the past presidents? It's crazy what has been going on, and as that headline described, it is chaos. But there has been achievement or things happening which are extremely significant within that chaos. And this verse here, a very famous verse, comes to mind, doesn't it, about Trump and his position this year, and he's back in the presidency. This is what Daniel said about the way God works in the world. The sentences is by the decree of the watchers, the decisions by the word of the holy ones, to the end that the living may know that the Most High rules in the kingdoms of men and gives it to whom he will and sets over it the lowliest of men. So Daniel very clearly said that as he believed, and he knew from first-hand experience, because he lived under what was a fairly crazy at times King Nebuchadnezzar. And he knew that despite the craziness of that man, God was in control. And he was orchestrating all the events that had happened. And he'd been told that, hadn't he? He'd been told Daniel 2 and all these other great prophecies, and he knew that God was in charge. And it's no different, brothers and sisters, to our own day today. The Most High is ruling in the kingdoms of men, and he doesn't care who he uses. He will use anyone he needs to achieve his purpose. And so he does. Okay, the April the 21st, 2025. This is one I expected that you probably would get. But this is a major event, but I must admit when I was going through it, I was like, I forgot that if this even happened. But this could happen in another year and it would be like the biggest event. The death of the Pope. Pope Francis died on the 21st of April. There he is there, in his casket. Not looking too good, is he? He died on the 21st of April 2025. And wasn't there fanfare around the death and particularly the funeral of this man? All the foreign dignitaries, all the presidents, all the people of any importance were at that event. Such is the command of the Pope. And people think, religion, people don't care about that anymore, or, Pope, is it? When the Pope dies, there's nothing bigger. And there's Trump in the front, we've got the Macron there and his wife and all these other foreign dignitaries. Anyone who was anyone was at that funeral. Such is the wielding of power of that man. Now, Pope Francis was an influential pope, wasn't he? And why he was influential in particular is that he changed almost the message of the Catholic Church during his time. And he focused very much on trying to get political wins for the church. And so he focused on social issues like climate change and equality. And he very much preached that through and ecumenicalism, trying to bring people together, trying to bring more Christians together under his banner. And he's been enormously influential during his time. Now, he also made way then for the next pope. Does anyone know what the next pope's name is? Pope Leo, that's right. And I must admit, I think the Pope Leo is sort of, since he's come into power, he's been pretty low profile. And he hasn't sort of done that much. Until, actually, this week. This week, he embarked on his first official visit abroad as the Pope. It's really interesting where he went. He went to Turkey. And here he is with the president of Turkey, Erdogan. He met with Turkey. He met with the president. Then he went to a mosque. And this tells us what his outlook is going to be and what he's trying to do. He's trying to reach out into faith and make connections and bring influence in a very, very broad way. And so he went in to this blue mosque, which is like the key mosque in Istanbul in Turkey. He then, after that, he met with this guy here, who is the head of the Orthodox Church in what was Istanbul, what was Constantinople. So that's the Eastern Roman Empire. Now, this is a massively significant event because that guy represents the church in the east of Europe. And you see, those two people were once together in one united church. But they separated in around the year 1000, which is called the Great Schism, and they've been separated ever since. And his first international visit as the new pope was to sign an agreement between these two churches that they want to start to work together and combine a lot more. This is what he said, or this is an excerpt from what they both said in a combined statement. Following the example of our venerable predecessors and heeding the will of our Lord Jesus, we continue to walk with firm determination on the path of dialogue in love and truth towards the hoped-for restoration of full communion between our sister churches. That's what I want to try and do. I want to bring those two churches together and be as one again. The commemoration of the 1700 anniversary of the First Ecumenical Council of Nicaea, celebrated on the eve of our meeting, was an extraordinary moment of grace. The Council of Nicaea, held in 325 AD, was a providential event of unity. We must also recognise that what binds us together is the faith expressed in the Creed of Nicaea. So this was no accident that this man happened to rock up in Turkey at this particular time. It was extraordinarily carefully planned to coincide with the 1700th anniversary of the Conference of Nicaea. Now that conference is what ruined Christianity, because that's when they came up with the idea of the Trinity. And they all agreed to it in that conference. And this Pope is saying we can come together upon that basis. That's what we're going to come together on the basis of. So he's building influence, isn't he? That's what he wants to do. Now, we might think, oh, who cares about that? Why do we care about that? Who cares what the Pope does? What's his involvement in all this? Like, what's that got to do with us? Like, let him do his thing. Well, why that's important to us, brothers and sisters, is that the scriptures say that when Jesus Christ returns, that his church and a whole lot of other people are going to actually oppose the return of Jesus Christ, or him and his kingship. And this church is going to be a leader in that, an influential leader. This is what Revelation 17 verse 13 says. These kings have a single intent, and they will give their power and authority to the beast. They will make war with the Lamb, but the Lamb will conquer them. Now, without going into the background of that, to be very simplistic, what's going to happen is the kings of this world, the influential people, or some of them, are going to have to make a decision as to whether they're going to accept Jesus as who he says he is, the King of Israel in Israel. And the church is going to influence many of them to say, we don't believe that. And they're tragically going to war against the Lamb, that new enthroned king in Israel. Now, we're seeing the seeds of that sown now. And the influence of that sown now through the leaders and the kings of the world. All of that is leading to that already preordained destiny. So a very significant event happened there in April. All right, what about June the 21st, 2025? Yes, it was the start of what Donald Trump was very keen to call the 12-day war. And who was that war between? Iran and Israel, exactly. So on the 21st of June, there started a 12-day war. And you know who started that war? It was Israel. Israel has been talking for years, haven't they, about how Iran has got a nuclear facility. They're close to getting nuclear weapons. We need to stop them from getting into power, getting those nuclear weapons. And so they've been saying for years, we're going to do something. And you know what? They were emboldened enough this year to say, we're going to do it. And they fired all these rockets into Iran. And then this is a picture of Iran retaliating because they sent missiles back. And of course, Israel's got this unbelievable military system called the Iron Dome, where any of the rockets that fire into any part of Israel are instantly deflected and shot down by missiles, or most of them anyway. And so there was this tit-for-tat war that happened for 12 days. And then at the end of the 12 days, out of nowhere, Donald Trump got involved and he announced, does anyone know what he called it? I just can't remember. It was called Operation Midnight Black Hawk or something. Yeah, Midnight Hammer or something. Actually, maybe it's on the next thing. Operation Midnight Hammer. There we go. And he sent these B-2 bombers, which Trump described as these beautiful big black planes. They're so beautiful. Did you see them? And that's the way he talked about it, didn't he? And what happened was these beautiful big black B-2 bombers, they went from America all the way across, and they were shielded on each side by the F-35s, which is their number one fighter jet, and they made their way all the way through, and they had to be refueled on the way as well. So they had these refueling jets that would refuel them as they went, and they went all the way, and they bombed the nuclear sites of Iran, and they used these bunker bombs, which apparently only America have, that went down deep into the facility. And according to America and Donald Trump, it was the greatest success ever. And they defeated or destroyed all of those bombs. And Iran, really, out of all this, has been humiliated. This is what Donald Trump said after it in a tweet. We have completed our very successful attack on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordo, Natanz and Esfahan. All planes are now outside of Iran's airspace. A full payload of bombs was dropped in the primary site, Fordo. All planes are safely on their way home. Congratulations to our great American warriors. There is not another military in the world that could have done this. Of course, he's usually very humble, as he is here. Now is the time for peace. Thank you for your attention on this matter. And that's actually the first information we got about this whole event that was happening. So America with Israel had a military campaign against Iran and really crippled Iran. And I guess the interesting thing about that is that we've not really heard anything since about Iran. And Iran has really been the other large power within the Middle East that had any kind of opposition towards Israel. But I think what's happened is that Israel has really shown that in the Middle East, it now has the confidence to be the most powerful nation in that particular region. There's no one that's going to challenge them. And there's a confidence about that because they would never have preemptively struck Iran like that in the past. But there's a confidence about Israel now in what they've been doing. And Israel also now has the strongest military in the Middle East. It has 75 F-35s, which are the most powerful fighter jet in the world. It's got 75 of them. And there's no military power in that region that can possibly challenge it in current circumstances. Now, why is that of interest to us? Because, of course, the prophets told us about the circumstances that would be in place in the world, and particularly in the Middle East, when when Jesus would come in the last days upon the earth. And we know these verses in Ezekiel chapter 38, but it's worth looking at it again. Ezekiel 38 verse 8 says this, "And after many days you will be mustered." And this is talking about the northern power that's going to come against Israel. "In the latter years you will go against the land that is restored from war, the land whose people were gathered from many peoples upon the mountains of Israel, which had been continual waste. Its people were brought out from peoples and now dwell securely." And of course that happened in 1948. And when they were brought into 1948 and they became a nation again in Israel, their military was nothing. It was made up of a few tanks which they got given from other people. They had nothing. But in the last 70 years, they have built an enormous military force to the strongest capacity. And the Bible says that when Jesus returns, this nation will be dwelling securely. Now that word means boldly and with confidence. And I would suggest to you that those are some of the words that you could use to describe the Israel that we see in the Middle East today. Certainly bold and certainly increasing every day in confidence. And that's how God said that they would be in the world. And they've not been like that, have they? They've always been the underdog, but they're not the underdog anymore. They very much command their own destiny in the Middle East from this point forward. August the 3rd. This is the one I thought you probably wouldn't get, and I don't think you will. But someone might. It's actually about an event that happened in Australia, but it's related to everything else. No, actually pretty close to that though. It's actually, and you're not going to get it, not because you don't, not because you're not smart or you haven't been looking, but just because it's a bit of an obscure one, particularly that date, because it's been happening the whole year. It was, on August 3rd, was when there was the biggest of the rallies against Israel and for Palestine that happened in Sydney. You might remember they marched across the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And this is, I mean, this is some of the stuff that, like, it's just acceptable. Well, it's not acceptable, but people just carry this kind of stuff. And that's not just happened in Australia, is it? I mean, it's amazing that it happens in Australia. There it is. We're on George Street here. There's Mecca, you know, and the streets were just packed of people, and a lot of them carrying really anti-Semitic posters with anti-Semitic messages about Israel. And it wasn't just in Australia, it was everywhere across the world. As this unified voice for Palestine and against Israel was just reverberated from city to city to city, everywhere. We want, Gaza should be saved, and of course there's legitimate reasons for people not wanting violence, but it's amazing the proportion and scale to which the protest happens against Israel. Where are, I thought, all the protesters for the Ukraine? As the war rages still to this day. Where are the protesters? They were there for about, 5 minutes when it first started. And yet they're all gone. But when Israel's involved, there's this endless enthusiasm to want to get out in the streets and protest against it. And we've witnessed that in our own cities and in our own country. And it's also all around the world. I was in Hong Kong for work, me and Luke, a month or so ago. I couldn't believe it. Just through the streets of Hong Kong, there's protesters for Palestine. I mean, I didn't even realise they were aware of the issue, but everyone knows about it. So why is that significant? Well, because it shows, doesn't it, how anti-Semitism is just very closely under the surface. And in the end, this is what God said will happen. For I will gather all nations. And who are they going to come against? They're going to come against Jerusalem and Israel. And people are going to consent to that happening. Many nations are going to consent to that happening. Because there's this underlying hatred for Israel and for the Jewish people that's connected with them being the people of God. That's why it's there. It's because they're God's people. So that's a very significant thing that's happened in the world. And it's going to be interesting to watch that now as things have settled down in the Middle East to see how that all pans out. August the 15th. This was a big event. Not that one, but it does involve Trump and a peace plan, and that's been the word for this year, isn't it? Peace plan, because he's... Yes? No, not the Charlie Kirk shooting. He doesn't make my list, unfortunately. Yes, which was... no, not the one for Israel. The Ukraine, and in particular, a peace conference which was held, or a meeting that was held in Alaska. He loves the big letters, hasn't he? Just always about the branding. He's always got the big foam letters. The guys who are providing those foam letters must be doing roaring business with Trump in the White House, because he's like, I want Alaska, I want 2025, and it was all very orchestrated. He flew into Alaska on his plane. Putin came on his plane. He had those they're the F-35s there, the top of the range fighter jets. He had them all positioned as he walked through, and as he came through, there was like these planes that all came over, perfectly orchestrated, because he loves it to be just like that. And of course, what they were trying to do is bring to a head this war in the Ukraine as well. And why does Trump want to do this? I mean, he doesn't really care about all this kind of stuff. He's desperate to get what? What is he trying to get? The Nobel Peace Prize, right? And he tells everyone about it. He's desperate to get it. Obama got it, so I've got to get it as well. So he thinks, maybe this is my ticket to do it. And so he got Putin, and they sat down and they went through these talks. And of course, the talks didn't go that well, but he's been going back and forth with the Ukraine and in Russia, trying to end this conflict. And this one happened earlier in the year. This is Zelensky. You remember that famous meeting in the White House where Trump was like, "Excuse me, I'm sorry. You're not thankful enough." And then JD Vance, he got involved as well, and it was just amazing to watch that going on. And they're trying to bring about this peace plan between the two of them, which is an absolute nightmare, isn't it? Because basically, what Putin is saying is, I'm not giving up any of the land. So what he's eventually going to have to do, Zelensky, is just say, all right, let's cut off the bits that are gone and accept that they're going to go. And it sounds like, in the last couple of days, that may very well happen. They've presented a 30-point peace plan, and they're now negotiating. I think that Witkoff guy has gone to Russia to sit down with Putin and to try and nail the last bits of it. So we may very well see, before the end of the year, that a truce made between Russia and between the Ukraine. And that ends, can anyone remember when that war started? '22, yeah, 4 years, nearly 4 years that war's been going on. And of course, that was just when it got serious, because they invaded Crimea 12 years ago. Right? So that's been going on for an enormous amount of time, this war. And it sounds like they're getting to the point where they may bring it to a head. And it's been interesting to see what's happened, isn't it, right? To see Russia in all this. Russia really has been, in some ways, militarily humiliated out of it. Because they thought probably they were going to be able to roll into the Ukraine, do whatever they wanted very quickly and very easily. That's not been the case. Now, they're prepared to war the war of attrition, as they have in all the wars throughout history. Right? They don't care about their men. Right? They just churn through them. We'll stay in as long as we need to. But it's interesting to see what that's happened. Right? And I found this article, which I thought was interesting, about what happens with Russia now. The war has served not only as a test for Russia's military resilience, but also as a real-time experiment for its future defence doctrine and industrial policy. Despite considerable international sanctions and military losses, Russia appears poised to emerge from the current phase of the war politically, economically and socially intact, if not emboldened. With a wealth of battlefield knowledge to draw upon, Moscow is likely to treat this war as a template for future wars. Preparations for a long-term military build-up are already underway, centred on lessons learned from the Ukrainian campaign. And I read another article that said that Russia plans to modernise its military by 2030. And often that's what happens during a time of war, isn't it? You concentrate on the development very quickly of your military. And it was suggested here that perhaps that is going to be one of the outcomes. And it's interesting, isn't it, that two of the players that we believe will be part of the alliance that will come down against Israel, Russia and Iran, have both been militarily humiliated over the last 10 years. Now, that normally doesn't sort of work out very well when that happens. So it'll be interesting, very interesting, to see what happens with Russia over the coming years as a result of what happens in the Ukraine. And they're certainly not going to go away. This is, when I talk about military spending, they're not the only one. The world is gearing up, aren't they? Here we go. Here's the figures. This is the last one was 2024, but the world is ramping up its spending. Donald Trump's out there telling everyone, you've got to spend more. Everyone's got to spend more. What are we spending more for? What are we preparing for? What are we getting all these weapons ready for? Well, Ezekiel 38 says about Russia, about that northern confederate group of nations, I will turn you about and put hooks into your jaws. There's going to be some reason that God actually has to bring this country down into the Middle East. It's not going to be some kind of voluntary thing. All of your army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed full of armour and a great host, all of them with buckler and shield, wielding swords. There's an emphasis there that they will be very highly militarised. And perhaps that's what we're going to see with Russia as they continue to develop their military over the next few years. They're already the second biggest military in the world. And I'm sure they're going to go away after what's happened in the Ukraine and develop that even further. And eventually they will play a part in this end battle. October the 15th. No. What's that? Yeah, that's right. It was, and John did say it before, this was the peace treaty between Gaza and Israel. And of course, Trump was front and centre with it as well. Now, the reason how this escalated to this point where they needed to say, we need to do something, was Israel got so bold in the Middle East that they decided not only to preemptively strike Iran, they fired a missile into, does anyone remember what the country was? Qatar. They fired a missile into Qatar, which is supposed to be like fairly friendly towards them, because they knew that some of the Palestinian leaders were in there. And so bold were they that they decided, we're going to go and we're going to actually strike that particular place. Now that seems like that was the catalyst for even the Qataris to say, we don't want to be involved in this. We need to actually sit down and work this out now. This is unacceptable. And Trump came out and said, oh, this is unacceptable. We didn't know about it. He absolutely, definitely would have known about it. But that was the catalyst to bring this together here, this peace treaty between Palestine and between Israel. And of course, this war's been going on for over 2 years. It started in October the 7th, 2023. And it's been raging, and it's a terrible war, isn't it? If you've seen any of the photos of Gaza, it's horrific. And we're thankful that it's come to an end. But what a significant end it came to. And of course, Trump organised the entire thing. He flew into Jerusalem and he had this very special meeting in the Jerusalem Parliament with Benjamin Netanyahu to celebrate the bringing together of this peace treaty. And he gave a speech which went for about 2 hours as people had to sit and listen to it. And then he got in his plane at about lunchtime and he flew down to Sharm el-Sheikh, which is a resort in Egypt, where there was waiting. He had the letters all done. Make sure you get the letters right with the foam letters. They're going to be peace 2025. I want them in the front. And so they put there, and there they all were. All these dignitaries from all these places. There was 28 representatives from 28 countries. You know, that's the biggest ever conference of Middle East peace that there's ever been, of all the nations coming together like that. And you know, some of these nations, some of the president of the Arab League was there. You've got the president of Egypt. You've got the president of Turkey. You've got the president of Qatar and all the UAE and representatives from Saudi Arabia. These countries denied even the existence of Israel 50 years ago. But they all came together, with Trump being the champion, to bring about this peace deal. And people have said, oh, well, how long is it going to last? Is it going to last? What's the point of it? It's lasted, interestingly, to this point. And it is interesting, isn't it, that a man like Trump was able to get all these people together into this room to agree upon at least these initial stages of peace. And this is what the president of Egypt said, which I thought was interesting. This was his introductory words to the conference. Let us ensure this historic moment ushers in a new beginning for a life defined by justice and peaceful coexistence. Let us look forward together to a brighter future for the children of our nations. Let us join forces to forge a just and durable peace for all peoples of the region. Let us ensure this historic moment ushers in a new beginning for a life defined by justice and peaceful coexistence. Let us look forward together to a brighter future for the children of our nations. Let us join forces to forge a just and durable peace for all peoples of this region. 4 times he emphasises peace within the first 2 paragraphs of his introduction to his speech. And that's what they want. They want to try and work together in peace in the Middle East region. And perhaps this is the first stepping stone towards a longer peaceful period. And why is that significant, brothers and sisters? Well, of course, Ezekiel 38 goes on to say, not only will Israel be dwelling securely, in other words, confident in its own military power and strength, which we definitely do see the evidence of today, but this one says this in verse 11, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages, and I will go to them that are at rest, that dwell safely, all of them dwelling without walls and having neither bars nor gates. So Israel not only will dwell securely at the time of the northern invasion, but it will also be at peace. That word there, rest, means to be quiet, settled, and still. You know, it's used a lot in the record of the kings, when the kings would battle for a long time. David battled for a long time, and it said, and finally, the land had rest from war. Gideon, when he defeated the Midianites, it said, finally, the land had rest from war. And so the biblical record seems to be implying that there will be this time of quiet and peace in the Middle East before the final destruction comes. And perhaps, brothers and sisters, this is the seeds of that happening before our very eyes in this peace cry that is being made. Finally, November the 15th, which is related to this as well. This is just a few weeks ago. It's another Trump thing. It's just the same old sort of stuff. Another foreign dignitary, but a very significant event. He welcomed someone into the White House for the first time in 7 years. No, not Putin. The Saudi prince, who they called MBS. Here he is here, very popular prince in Saudi Arabia. And of course he's under a cloud because he killed some kind of journalist, and he's not been allowed in the White House since, but Trump was like, forget about that. And they tried to ask the question at the press conference. He's like, no, I'm not hearing anything about that. And so he welcomed him in, and the reason why he welcomed him in is because he wants to do a very big arms deal with him. And of course, he's got the money to spend on it, and he's promised that he's going to sell him 40 F-35s, which is an enormous amount of money and a significant military infrastructure for Saudi Arabia. The other interesting thing I noticed about this photo, and it's been interesting to watch it over the last year, Trump is crazy for gold, right? He's crazy for it. And he has been just putting more and more gold on that Oval Office as the year goes past, right? So this is like Zelensky, okay? He already had gold ornaments here. He's got the gold Trump ashtray here, which says Trump, right? But he was obviously like, I need more gold. So look at when the Saudi prince comes here. He's like, I need all of this to be gold as well. I want a cover for the fireplace. That's got to be gold, right? All of this gold detail. And soon the entire Oval Office is going to be covered in gold. Because that's what he's like, isn't he?
See, the prince got his headdress from our Sunday school.
Yes, that's right. He'd fit very well onto this stage, wouldn't he? So, of course, they did this peace deal. And why is that significant, of course? Well, because we think, here he is selling the F-35s, we believe that Sheba and Dedan are Saudi Arabia. or part of that ancient region of Saudi Arabia. And they, we are told, will be with the merchants of Tarshish, which is Britain and its offshoots, including the US. They will be together to oppose the invasion into Israel. And so isn't it interesting that these nations are coming together and forming closer and closer military pacts together? You know, in conclusion, if you look at the map of Ezekiel chapter 38, which we've looked at many times, and you look at all the nations that are involved, you know, this year, virtually every single one of those nations listed up there has had a significant event happen in its region. You've got Europe and the Pope here. You've got Turkey. You've got Egypt, you've got Saudi Arabia. You've got America. You've got Israel. You've got Iran. All of these are the key players in the end times war that's going to come upon Israel. And all of them are moving. All of them are having significant things happen to them this year. And I would say that the main thing, if you were to describe it in one word, all the things that have happened this year, I would say there's been a push for peace. Peace has been the cry, particularly from Donald Trump, because he wants that peace prize, but that's what he's been trying to achieve, peace. Now, I just want to, in conclusion, turn to our reading, 1 Thessalonians. Chapter 5, where I think there's just some things for us, a message for us that we can take away from this and prepare ourselves for this as well. You know, Thessalonians is really interesting because most of the advice that you get in the epistles in the New Testament about the end times are usually related to AD 70, but Thessalonians is not about AD 70. It's about the return of Jesus Christ to the earth, the second coming. And so the words and messages that he gives us here in these first couple of verses are really important for us to take hold of. Look what he says in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, first in verse 1. Now concerning the times and seasons, brothers, you have no need to have anything written to you. For you yourselves are fully aware that the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night. So the first thing that Paul says, which I find interesting, is you guys know all this. I've given you all this information. I've laid it out. Jesus has laid it out. God has laid it out so carefully for us, to the point where there is no excuse for us to expect Jesus to come as a fright and a thief that we would never have expected. No, we know about it because it's all been laid out. And if you look at the timeline from this year, look at all the things that have happened, which God is doing for us. He's doing it for us. He's laying them out one by one. All the things according to his plan. And so he says, you guys should be across this. You should know about it, you and your families. And then he says this, verse 3, while people are saying there is peace and security, then sudden destruction will come upon them as labour pains to a pregnant woman, and they will not be able to escape. The peace and safety, brothers and sisters, that the world will bring, and it appears that there will be somewhat of a peace in the Middle East before the return of Jesus, will be extremely fragile and crushed in a moment. And so you need to be ready for that. Don't be lulled into a false sense of security. Jesus will come. And that's what it said about the northern invader. When he does come, you know how it describes it? He says, I'll come down like a storm. Like a storm that comes out of nowhere. That's how he'll come down. So we need to be ready for it. And so then he leaves us with a few exhortational things to think about. And I just want to leave us with these few verses, just to take away about how we can be prepared for that day. He says, but you are not in darkness, brothers, for that day to surprise you like a thief. For you are the children of light and the children of day. We are not of the night. We are not of the darkness. So then, let us keep sober as others do. Let us not sleep as others do, but keep awake and be sober. For those who sleep, sleep at night, and those who get drunk are drunk at night. But since we belong to the day, let us be sober. Now, that's what he advises us to do. He says, we need to be sober. Don't get caught up with all the rest of the world and everything that they want to do and where they want to go. But you need to be sober. You know what that word sober means? It means to be clear-minded, to have a clear objective and mind. And that's what Paul said we need to have. Now, you know, he tells us how to keep that. Look what he says in this last verse. Having put on the breastplate of faith and love and the helmet of hope, of the hope of salvation. So he says, if you want to be able to stay sober, clear-minded, you need to protect yourself. And interestingly, he says you need to wear a helmet and you need to wear a breastplate. And what two organs of the human body would the helmet protect and the breastplate protect? The heart and the mind. And Paul says if you want to be clear-minded and navigate your way through the end times, you need to protect your heart and you need to protect your mind. You need to do that very carefully. You know how he says to do it? He says you do it by faith, hope, and love. Look at this verse, and we'll finish with this verse in Colossians. How do we protect our heart? Well, our heart's susceptible to emotions, isn't it? It's susceptible to fear and worry about the future. You know the remedy to that? Faith in Christ Jesus. Trust that man and everything that he stood for in your life. And if you do that, you'll never have to fear. What are you also susceptible to do in your heart? Well, you can become bitter and resentful. And Paul says, what's the remedy for that? Love for the saints. Keep working in the meeting and do it out of love. And that will protect your heart. And what about your mind? Well, he says that the way to keep your mind clear is never forget hope. Build that into your mind as the number one thing. Hope for the future. And you know, we'll finish with these words. Look at what it says in the last few verses of Thessalonians, verse 9 and 10. It says this, "For God has not destined us for wrath, but to obtain salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ, who died for us, whether we are awake or asleep, we might live with him." The plan is that we will be with him in the kingdom. That's the plan. So keep that in the forefront of your mind, and that will help you to keep clarity in these last days. So thank you very much for your attention. I enjoyed looking at some of those key dates and just thinking about how they apply to ourselves and ultimately the return of our Lord. Thank you.